Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video. And we did it! Big thank you to everybody for contributing all of their feedback and concerns, as one of the major concerns for Shadowlands when it came to PvP was PvP itemization and PvP gear being relevant in PvP. We've got an update here. Shadowlands PvP update incoming. As we mentioned in last week's Shadowlands development update, we've heard a lot of feedback from the PvP community that conquest vendors in Shadowlands don't offer enough of most players' desired stats, leading to the sense that much of the best gear for PvP will have to be earned outside of PvP. We don't want that to be the case. Our current plan to address these concerns should become available in the Shadowlands beta over the next couple of weeks. First, we're shifting the stat distribution on conquest gear to always include versatility. Wise move, obviously, as versatility has pretty much been the best stat for every specialization in the game when it comes to PvP. There should be two out of the three combinations, versatility haste, versatility mastery, and versatility crit, available for every slot. Secondly, we are adding a 2-piece set bonus activated by equipping 2 PvP trinkets, such as a crowd control break medallion or a throughput battlemaster / dominance, etc. trinket. These bonuses will increase the damage and healing benefits of versatility, but not the defensive benefit while in arenas, battlegrounds, or war mode. So they really, like, this is a really impressive update when it comes to the itemization of PvP gear, because I had a ton of concerns from their initial update prior to this post, and those concerns were weapons and trinkets. So with this, by wearing 2 trinkets that you get only from PvP, you're going to get a massive increase to your versatility. It still needs to be enough to outweigh a lot of the PvE trinkets, which are looking very similar to the ones in Battle for Azeroth that were incredibly problematic in PvP, such as providing you a shield on a very short cooldown, a very large shield on a short cooldown, splitting damage between targets to make it really difficult to actually execute on a strategy to end a match. The PvE trinkets are still looking like they could possibly be problematic if this set bonus isn't strong enough to counteract them. My recommendation would be to just lower the flat out power of the raid trinkets or PvE trinkets by just a flat amount across the board, whether that's 50 or 80%, whatever the number needs to be, so we don't have a repeat of like Zalvek's Veiled Eye from the first season of BFA, all the way up to Machimba's Bandages. I mean, there were so many trinkets in PvP that were just Resident Sleeper, right? And that's coming from somebody who played a Guardian Druid, which is probably the maximum Resident Sleeper. So hopefully those trinkets aren't going to be a problem with this new set bonus. However, I feel like if they're not also nerfed, the set bonus may not be enough on its own. Another problem comes in with specific weapons that have special effects. This in Battle for Azeroth was things like the Gedi-Iku, the two-handed sword, which a lot of warriors ran King's Rest for a lot of times, to the point where they probably never want to see the place ever again, right? Unless there are going to be PvP weapon effects like the Gedi-Iku to proc a bleed on a target or a disease or what have you, similar to the Bilekrog Tusks, the dual-wield weapons that we saw from Battle for Azeroth, I still feel like those are likely going to be weapons that you need to go after if they end up existing in their form. If the weapons from Mythic Plus and the weapons from raids don't have special effects and they're just purely stat weights, then it might just be like, oh, I'm losing a tiny bit of haste and I'm getting mastery instead. I could go do the raid to get that haste. It's not the end of the world to me, but maybe it is. Maybe 1 week, like, I'm going to go try the raid out because I want to try and get the better itemized piece. It's not immediately negatively impacting you if it's like that, but you could go out and get it if you wanted to. So my main concern at the moment is PvE trinkets, again, following the same type of trend that we saw throughout Battle for Azeroth, still being relevant even with a set bonus, and then weapon effects, special weapon effects. Because I can imagine a lot of people, especially warriors, because I'm friends with a lot of warriors, don't want to be running King's Rest 2.0 of Shadowlands 8 billion times hoping that it drops their sword or they get it from their vault. They would much rather just be able to select the weapon from the vendor itself. So those are my concerns, but I'm very impressed with this because they've also included that the versatility benefit is only offense, having seen the implications of the versatility corruption amps in PvP, where when the defensive portion was increased as well, It prolonged matches. It made it borderline impossible to kill targets. So by getting ahead of that, they've gotten ahead of it by making it only the offensive portion of the versatility. So all around, it seems really good. You're going to get all of your main PvP pieces from PvP. You might have maybe 1 to 3% less of haste, for example, than the warrior who is doing PvP and mythic raiding and juggling that schedule. And I don't think you're necessarily going to lose a match, because the warrior who enjoys playing competitively in all aspects of the game has 3% haste over you, right? Now, if they have a powerful trinket on top of an insane weapon effect and a bunch of enchants applied to their gear like corruption, and you don't, and your items are all horribly itemized, then yes, you're probably losing because of the gear. But that's not the case with this update. Now, the Conquest vendor will not offer the perfect stat coverage of every stat combination, but neither does any other single source of gear in WoW. A player who favors haste and mastery cannot get a full set of haste mastery gear from raiding alone. So if you're someone who wants to be absolutely optimal, you'll benefit from branching out across multiple types of content. Nonetheless, the result of these changes should be that the majority of the best gear for PvP now comes through PvP. We look forward to your feedback on this, especially following your experiences testing the new itemization over the coming weeks. So one thing that hasn't been addressed with this is how much currency are we going to be earning? For example, am I going to have to do 30,000 honor to buy the honor pieces? How many hours in random battlegrounds to get the honor gear? How many weeks of capping my conquest until I can buy my statted gear? Because at the moment, it hasn't addressed the item level. This is strictly the conquest gear being spoken about in this post. It's not the honor gear. That when we looked at it, it looked really ridiculous how much honor you would have to earn to upgrade a piece of gear to a raid finder quality. But what gear are you supposed to be using prior to casting or capping your conquest? Because you're not just going to get all your conquest in 1 week and get all of this gear. That's never how it has worked. So what gear, my main concern after this post, which I think is great, is what gear are we expected to use prior to completing our conquest cap? Because the best source of gear would be Mythic Plus to spam and then do a weekly raid on top of doing your PvP prior to getting all of the conquest cap done. So is there going to be a catch-up mechanic as well? Am I going to be able to earn conquest from previous weeks that I didn't get in those weeks in the current week and catch up? Because that could be a really big problem where, sure, I'm getting all of the best gear from PvP, but I came into the game a month after Shadowlands came out. I want to start PvPing. How am I supposed to catch up my character? What content do I need to do? Is it going to be the random battlegrounds? How many random battlegrounds? The higher level gear would come from PvE. How restricted is this going to be? Is really what I want to know. I almost wish that they would, I don't know how they do this, but turn it on the beta where ranked PvP is open on the beta. We can cap our conquest for a week, then see what our reward structure looks like the following week and get a better idea of this, because those would be the big problems for me. Is catch up. How much conquest a week are we getting? Is there a catch up mechanic to that conquest? So if I miss a week or I've started late or I've made an alt, how am I going to catch up on that conquest to get this? How is the item level of the gear going to be split? Because we were just given a split for Mythic Plus, where if you do a plus 15, you get a 210 from the end of the dungeon and a 226 from your vault. So getting a split of what rating cutoffs, what item level the gear is that comes from those split offs, how much conquest you're getting per week. I feel like there's a lot of unanswered questions that I have at the moment that I can't figure out on the beta myself. And I would either like to be run through a process to see what it looks like on the beta, or a post depicting exactly how it's planned out. Like, you can earn 1,000 conquest every week, and a weapon is 3,000 conquest. So in 3 weeks, you would get your weapon. But is that weapon always 226 item level, or do you need to be a certain rating to get that weapon at a 226 item level? Right now, when you look at the vendor, all of the gear is 226, but is that how it's going to be? Because I'm currently 0 rated right on the beta. So there's a couple of unanswered questions there that are a big concern for me, but I am very impressed with this post. I am very grateful that they were receptive to the feedback, and I think their response to it was more than adequate. Like, it's an excellent response. It's just that I have some unanswered questions about how much conquest gear in a week. How is the catch-up mechanics going to work for this? What gear are we going to be using prior to our conquest gear? Because you can spend Mythic Plus to get a bunch of gear from that at 210, which is much higher than random BG gear. You could do the raid on top of that prior to your conquest cap, which I would imagine is going to be restricted to a certain amount a week. So how much a week? We basically get the gist of it there. Regardless, we're going to be able to get a full set of gear from PvP. And it might be, what, 2-3% stat off of whatever your main stat was. Not as much of a big deal as it was in BFA, certainly at this point. But I just wanted to bring this to your attention, give you my thoughts on these changes, and let you know that it's actually happening. So thank you very much for tuning in, and we will see you in the next video.